I'm doing well, except for, obviously not muting my mic or unmuting it.
It's perfect. It's a perfect start. Well, talking about talking about failing, which I mean, we could say that was a little bit of fail. What do you? Why do I look? I've been doing some research on what you are up to, and I have to say, I love what you are promoting and what the move. It's almost like a movement you're starting. So why don't you get us up to speed on what you're up to?
Yeah, well, I did not want to do this. I did not want to be somebody who talked about failure. And then suddenly people are like, hey, you know what? You know what you're an expert on?
Wow.
Really getting it wrong. And so if you could just help people do that. Yeah, I threw a party and it was just supposed to be a one-time thing. And we called it a Fail-A-Bration.
I love that. That's so
I
cool.
invited some of my most accomplished friends who've won awards and been best-selling authors and built massive companies, and but they weren't allowed to talk about any of that. They had 5 minutes. They had to share their biggest screw up. And I just thought it would be this really funny kind of gathering. We'd have snacks and it would be great. But then what happened is people got emotional. Like, yeah, we
Yeah.
laughed and it was cringy and all the things, but yet it also brought everybody together. And a lot of the people in the room were strangers because they were different friend groups, different people from all over. And yet we ended that night feeling like family because it was just this human connection. And that one party turned into several where lots of people were throwing Fail-A-Brations. And Priya Parker, who writes about the art of gathering, she did a whole story on doing a purposefully bad event. And it's grown to where we now have, like, next month there's more than 200 Fail-A-Brations happening, and it's in companies, it's in boardrooms, classrooms, all the way from preschoolers are doing them all the way up to even people who are in prisons. And it
Wow.
just like it's just it's really taught me a lot about how I'm not alone and feeling like I don't get this being a person thing right all the time.
You know, it's so interesting because I think in this day and age, we tend to talk a lot more about our accomplishments. I mean, all you have to do is scroll on social media and you get to see everybody's accomplishments, what they're up to, how they're succeeding, how they're doing these things. And I feel like we don't talk about failure enough. But then I also think there's this weird like within companies, for example, there's this pressure of like, you've got to perform, you've got to do everything right. And so it really doesn't surprise me that as you start talking about failures, there's almost like a unification with that vulnerability. So like I guess what have been some of the comments that you've received from other people as they go, and like how has this even just like changed the way that they're operating and the way that they're able to be vulnerable with other people?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, you're right. There's a thing that I've definitely been noticing when I'm in a large group where I will see their physical posture change. Like their posture go from, this poise, this like kind of tight pressure to whenever these conversations start happening, they're leaning forward and then they're relaxing into their
Mm,
seat and relaxing into being. I see their physical bodies relax. And I've seen it happen in classrooms and I've seen it happen with adults. 1 in 3 kids deals with anxiety, like to such a degree they can't function. 1 in 3. And there's all of this sort of pressure cooker environment of testing and schedules that they deal with. And then there's all the pressure that adults have in whatever context they're in. We did a Fail-A-Bration with a room full of educators. And
mm.
I was really scared because it was an arena, 5,000 people. And I'm going, I don't know how this is going to work. And yet these educators get up and start sharing about their things that didn't go quite well. They're sharing about a student that they failed. They didn't see them as who they were and their potential. They didn't fully see them until the end of a school year. So you like
Mm.
start realizing the stakes are high in those kinds of mistakes. But then they also shared ones that made each other laugh. But there was one educator who shared that she perceived herself as being a failure because she had this crisis of mental health and she needed help and she had to take a break for a year. And what I saw was the whole room, like all the people who are sharing the stories, they all circle around her as she's, too emotional to share the rest of her story. And I saw a whole arena turn into a living room. And so what I'm recognizing is that in any context, if there's people, there's likely pain, and there's likely a way in which we can help each other know they're not alone in that. And so it's not a celebration of failure. It's not a celebration of mediocrity. It's a celebration of, hey, we can grow and help each other grow. And there's a big movement in education a while back, Carol Dweck's growth mindset, and that got pushed, and people see that, and that's really healthy. But there's this next phase I think we need in companies and classrooms and homes all over, of having a culture of growth, not just individual growth, but an entire community where you can grow and help each other grow. And I'm seeing models and examples of that all over.
Well, it's funny. I think even in nature, right? It's like you think about how a plant grows. A lot of times, to actually see new growth, you got to break it at the stems. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things. One of the interesting things you said was it's not celebrating failure, but it's you celebrate what almost can come from that failure when you have a perspective of, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to get stronger. I mean, I've seen this as a business owner where you just make decisions sometimes that just don't work. But I do find that, like, in corporate settings, in classrooms, that is not the culture. Like, we have this weird culture of everything has to be right, which produces a pressure. So where do you think that stems from? Like, does that really just stem from, like, the way that our school system tests and we have, like, pass fail? Or, like, where do you think that really comes from?
A lot of it comes from feeling like that's safe. Like it's safe for me to present myself as having it all figured out, and it's a lot of environments aren't deemed as being safe for you to screw up or safe to be imperfect in any way, whether it be school or a work environment. And yet, those are the kinds of a culture of growth is a place where it is we can share the things that we learned from. You can share the things that didn't quite go as well, where we can go forward with them. The thing that I've really been moved by are seeing the kinds of classrooms and kinds of places where people are sharing these stories with each other. When I interviewed um, I've interviewed so many different people, and who've done really impressive things, but the most helpful stories of them are not the things that went well. I want to hear the things that went sideways, the fiascos, the thing that just where they really crashed, because then they're being really honest, they're being vulnerable, and that vulnerability makes me stronger. It helps everybody. And so it's changed the way I speak with children when I tell stories and when I write stories for children. It's changed the way I show up in rooms with adults. It's like I want this to be a place where it's safe to share. It's safe to admit that you've messed up before, and you can help the whole room grow from it.
I love that. I love that. And you're talking about impressive things people have done. You're a New York Times bestseller, which is, I mean, that is impressive. What inspired you, like, to write the book, and what kind of started that journey for you?
Yeah, I was working on a completely different book, and I've been working on it for a really long time. And there's the image in my head of what my drawings are going to be. I'm an illustrator, and then there's what I can actually draw, and I screw up constantly. And hands are notoriously hard to draw for humans and AI. Even AI can't do it.
I
And
was I
I
was gonna
found
make an
myself
AI comment then, like, are you excited about that? And then, but that's interesting. Again,
yeah, like I get like this whole thing with hands is so hard. I started drawing characters with their hands in their pockets or behind them, but I was struggling, and realizing I was getting so frustrated with myself. And at the same time, these Fail-A-Bration parties were growing and growing, and realizing that maybe kids also needed what I also need right now, which is to know that I am not a failure. I've failed
Mm.
at drawing hands. I've experienced failure in pitching books that didn't work, pitching television shows that didn't fly, so many projects of mine that crashed and burned. And I took it on as my identity. I'm a failure. And
Yep.
I remembered being a fourth grader and being in math and thinking, I'm a failure because I can't do math. And that's just not true. Like, nobody, failure is not your identity, it's just an experience. And so this desire of letting kids know that, and every adult, I wanted to create a book that does that. And I love picture books most of all because they're one of the only mediums we have that are enjoyed usually by an adult and a child at the same time, because they're reading it. Sometimes a kid explores it and they have it themselves, but it's this really beautiful space where if you write something that resonates with a person who's 4 and who's in fourth grade and who's 94, then that's the challenge. I really like those things that are human. And so this book grew out of that desire to create something that spoke to every person.
Well, look, I feel like I'm just thinking experiences in my life where like I felt like a failure. I was told I was a failure. I told I'm not wasn't able to accomplish something, right? Or you tell yourself that a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Where so I know we're gonna be we're wrapping up here. Where can people find out, number one, about a Fail-A-Bration that's going on? Like, how do people get involved? And then where can people find more information about you and the book as well? Because I want to pick up an edition of the book too for my daughter and growing kids as well.
Yes, yes. So you can go to failabration.com where you can, sign up to host a party. We've got resources that are free for you can host a party for your company, for a classroom, for any age. We've got discussion guides, game activities, printables, and then we're going to be sharing lots of stories over the next few days and weeks of what it's growing from these, because we're seeing some really funny things, really beautiful things, hard things, but there's entire communities really coming together. And so failabration.com, and the book's available anywhere your favorite bookseller lives and shares books. The book's available, comes out September 10th. And we're excited that, as much as I don't want to be the failure guy, I do want to be a person who can create space where people feel freedom,
I love that.
and I've loved being able to do that, and I'm really looking forward to being in places where we're with kids and people who care about kids and people who used to be kids, as we let them know you're not a failure,
I love that.
but
I love it.
you're it's an experience. So I hope you fail better. That's the idea.
I love it. I love it. Well, Evan White just posted a link as well. So, montagueworkshop.com/Fail-A-Bration. Well, Brad, it has been great to meet you. I'm inspired. I'm thinking about what you're doing. I'm going to get involved, and we appreciate your time on the show. It was so good to see you.
Of course, I'm so excited about all this whole community here. There's so many leaders, so many people making good things happen. Go
Let's
fail better.
go. Let's go.